Now, it strikes me that I've not been getting to my Crime and Punishment essays over on my Substack, and the same for my humanities. When I started it up, it was basically copied from the format that Simon Heisel uses for his amazing War and Peace read-along, which I'm a member of and thoroughly enjoying. And when I saw what he was doing with Substack, I thought, yeah, this is next level stuff. I'm going to do that. However, it seems that following someone else's format might not work for me as well as coming up with my own might. So that's what I'm going to try and do here, because this is the second time that I've missed a week. And that really, I think, comes down to ADHD, imposter syndrome, capital R resistance, which you can learn about in this incredible book by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. So I understand all these psychological things that get in the way of producing the content that I want to produce, and a big part of it is also down to time. My time, like for you, is limited to 24 hours a day, and there are other things that demand my time. So yeah, my creative work has been slipping a bit. So I thought maybe if I do this as a recording and put it out on YouTube, or maybe as a podcast. So if I read the chapter of the book and record my thoughts as I go, that would give me something to bounce off to create some written content. I don't know, but I want to get loose and experimental rather than stuck to a rigid format that I didn't come up with, and that, admittedly is a fantastic format. It feels a bit like I'm being forced to come up with a written essay every week, and that just doesn't seem to work so well for me. And I know that for people reading along with me, it's really good to have a structure. In fact, I've signed up for some read-alongs myself when I saw they had a structure that I could add deadlines into my calendar, because that, with my kind of autism and ADHD brain, works. But when you're in the creator's seat, I'm finding it's a wee bit different. So I don't know, I just want to loosen up a bit and see what I can come up with. Try and change it up so that I'm not missing weeks and I'm not carrying around this guilt. It's like, I know people have paid to sign up and come and follow my expertise, which admittedly I do have. This is one of these imposter syndrome things. I am well read and I've got a degree in Russian and all that, so I'm qualified and curious. That'd be a good name for the channel, actually, wouldn't it? Qualified and curious. But one doesn't like to blow one's own trumpet, does one? This one being me is like, yeah, qualified? Yeah, I'm qualified. Why do I have such a hard time admitting that? I don't know. So, yeah, what I'm saying is I'm going to pick up the book now and I'm going to take a look. I'm going to read through it and just record some notes as I read. And then see how it comes out. It might make great content. It might make compelling content. I don't know. So, at the moment, obviously it's going to be spoiler city. So if you've not read Crime and Punishment, look away, because, this isn't for you. But if you want to jump in and follow along with this, you might just like it. I don't know. I'm in part 3 of the book, chapter 4. So what's just happened? See, it's been 2 weeks. We're in Raskolnikov's room with his family, his mother and his sister, Dunya, or Dunyechka. And I believe Zosimov was there, the doctor. Yeah. And his friend, let's have a look who's in here, chapter 3. Yeah, Zosimov has declared him absolutely fine in the last chapter. Is Razumikhin there as well? Yes, Razumikhin's there as well. So he's got a tiny little room. It's called a garret in Constance Garnett's translation. Tiny, tiny little room. And there's a bunch of people in there, and there's another one about to appear. So here we are at the start of chapter 4. At that moment the door opened quietly, and a girl appeared, shyly looking around her as she came into the room. So this, of course, is Sofia Semyonovna Marmeladova, or Sonia as she's known. He had seen her for the first time only the day before. Wow. I think perhaps because I've read this multiple times. That's a surprising fact. If this is your first time, it's probably not surprising at all. But that means last night was the wake of Sonia's dad, Marmeladov, at which Raskolnikov gave some money to Marmeladov's wife, Katerina Ivanovna, and then left. He gave her the money ostensibly for the funeral, which was the money that his mum had given him, which she'd scrimped and scraped for and borrowed, because she's not well off at all. She's on a pension, struggling financially. Alright, so Sonia's just come in. She looks intimidated. She sits down between Dunya and Raskolnikov's mum, and it says she suddenly stood up, highly embarrassed, turned to Raskolnikov. So she's come to invite him to the funeral the next day. And Raskolnikov, says yes, I shall do my best to come. And then, not finishing what he was saying, invites her to sit down and says, I've something I want to discuss with you. I know you may have to rush off, but please do me a favour. Give me 2 minutes of your time. So then it goes on to say that his face flushed. His whole body seemed to shake and his eyes started to glow. And then he introduces her to his mother. Some of the residents at Sonia's apartment are angry because they kept the body in the apartment for so long and it's hot and airless. So we get a description of the coffin, and Sonia says it'll be a plain coffin, of course. And then she looks round his room and he's like, why are you looking around my room? My mother says it looks like a coffin as well. I don't know if there's anything in that. Just an interesting little observation. And she's struck by Raskolnikov's impoverished circumstances. And her words had burst out of their own accord. Right, so they all leave the room. Looks like they leave Raskolnikov on his own. And as Sonia's going out, he says to her, God grants peace to the dead, and the living still have their lives ahead of them. That's right, isn't it? Well, isn't it? Well, of course it is right. And then it says, Sonia looked at his suddenly radiant face with some surprise. He looked silently and intently at her for a few moments, during which everything her father had told him about her flashed through his mind. So you remember back to the second chapter in the book when Raskolnikov is in the tavern with Marmeladov, and Marmeladov talks of Sonia with great love and shame as well, because she's given him money to drink his hangover away. And he tells Raskolnikov what her profession is. Talks of the yellow ticket, the yellow passport, or whatever you want to call it. So he knows a little bit about her just from her father. And then we've got Dunya and Pulcheria Alexandrovna on the street after they just left the apartment. Raskolnikov's sister and mother, and they're chatting about Pyotr Petrovich, because this is the night when they're going to have a meeting. And Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin, who's Dunya's betrothed, has specifically given instructions that Raskolnikov not be there. Otherwise, he'll call the whole thing off. And Raskolnikov has said he most certainly will be there. So that's what's coming up. But at the moment they're discussing that, and Pulcheria Ivanovna says that Sonia gives her a bad feeling. And she says there's something disturbing about her. She frightened me. She looked at me with those eyes. I could hardly sit still in my chair when he started introducing her. Do you remember? And I found it strange. Pyotr Petrovich said those things in his letter about her. But he goes and introduces her to us, to you, of all people. So she must mean something special to him. So Luzhin had said about her being a prostitute in the letter in which he said Raskolnikov should not be at the meeting. And Dunya's defending Sonia and saying, I'm sure she's a wonderful person, and this is all just nonsense. And Pyotr Petrovich is a worthless gossip. The conversation was over. So Sonia's still in the room, as is Razumikhin. And Raskolnikov says that he had a couple of items pawned at the old pawnbrokers, and he asks Razumikhin if he should go straight to see Porfiry Petrovich, whom we've not yet met. We've heard about, but we haven't met him. Rather than go to the police station to talk about his pledges, should he go straight to Porfiry Petrovich? And Razumikhin's like, yeah, of course. Forget the police station. Go and see Porfiry. So they're about to head off. Are we going to get to meet him? Ho ho! Okay, so we're on the street. Raskolnikov is like, how did you know where I stayed? And she said, you gave your address to Polyachka. So that's her sister, her wee sister. She's like, oh, aye, I remember now. And she said, I heard about you from my poor father. So Marmeladov has clearly talked about Raskolnikov to Sonia. And then it goes on to say that she felt wonderful to be free at last. She set off, her eyes fixed on the ground, walking as fast as she could to get away from them as quickly as possible and to cover the 20 steps to the turning on the right so that she could finally be on her own. So yeah, I can relate to that. It's like when I go and put the bin out, if a car comes down the road, I'll go and hide. It's insane, isn't it? So does that mean she's an introvert? Or she's shy? Possibly. It said that she'd never felt anything like that in her life before. She was becoming aware of a whole new, hitherto unknown and as yet indistinct world. And then she's reminded that Raskolnikov had said he was going to come and see her. So she's freaking out. She doesn't want him to come and see her room. And then there's a stranger. A stranger is following her. We don't know who it is. Is it Svidrigailov? That would be my bet. Or is it a new character? He was a man of about 50, of portly build and above average height, with broad high shoulders giving him a slight stoop. So who is this guy? His gloves were spotless. Is this Luzhin? So we've got quite a long description there of whoever this is. So he's not introduced, but he follows her to her apartment and turns out he lives next door. in the same apartment block. He moved there 3 days ago. So I shan't give it away, because I know who it is. You haven't read further on, you won't know, because he's not introduced. So we'll leave that there. And now they're on their way to Porphyry's. Razumichin was particularly excited. Razumichin is Porphyry's cousin. Razumichin's excited because he didn't know that Raskolnikov had pawned things with the old pawnbroker. And he says, that explains why you were rambling about rings and things and your delirium. Makes sense. Rings and chains or other. Yes, of course, it's all quite clear now. So we get a wee description of Porphyry's character here from Razumichin. He refers to him as a wonderful fellow. This is a little awkward. That is to say, he's a man of the world. I mean awkward in a different way. He's a clever chap, extremely clever, in fact, but it's just that he's got his own somewhat odd ideas. He's mistrustful, sceptical, cynical, loves to hoodwink people, or rather not hoodwink, but to make fools of them. Uses the old method, goes on facts, but he knows his job all right. Last year he solved a case of murder where there were hardly any clues. He's just dying to get to know you. Makes me think of Columbo, although he's probably a bit younger. No, Columbo was quite young in the earlier episodes, wasn't he? And Razumichin's like, yeah, I talked a lot of piss to you yesterday when I was drunk, so, just sorry. Don't take it to heart. And then Raskolnikov talks of having to play Lazarus, so he's trying to imagine how an innocent man would act when facing the chief prosecutor. So he's like, would you deliberately say nothing at all? No, deliberately wouldn't be natural. Oh, we'll have to see. My heart's pounding. That's the bad thing about it all. Still just getting to the house. The most important thing is whether or not Porphyry knows I was at the old witch's apartment yesterday and asked about the blood. So that was a bit of an insane move on Raskolnikov's part. What was he doing? In one of the earlier chapters, he goes back to the apartment, which is being renovated, it's being decorated. And he goes in and he says to the decorators, where's the blood? It's like, nut job. So he's clearly not in his right mind. We know that. But does Porphyry know that? I would think so, if he's like Columbo. Razumichin and Raskolnikov engage in a bit of banter, a bit of friendly banter, so that when they arrive at Porphyry's door, they're laughing, and it says that that's what Raskolnikov wanted. From inside the apartment, they could be heard laughing as they came through the front door and on into the hallway. And that's where the chapter ends. So we're not going to get to meet Porphyry just yet. You'll have to tune in for that next week. So what do we have in this chapter? Lots of dialogue. I like the chapters with dialogue in them. They go by quicker. And I get the sense that Raskolnikov is just digging the hole deeper and deeper with what he comes out with. He's trying to act normal. I'm trying to imagine what normal is like. I don't know if he's succeeding at that. And we've got the scene with Sonia and that little description of Sonia being followed and her introversion, her shyness. So it's a chapter where we get to know Sonia better. We have a description, a physical description of her, and then we get that little clip where she's relieved to be out and on her own. And we also, there's a bit I didn't read out where Pulcheria and doing you get out onto the street, and it describes how being out on the street is it's hot and stuffy. It doesn't feel any cooler than it does being indoors. Because remember, we're in the white nights, the heat of the July summer, and the heat of the city is palpable. In fact, the very first line of the novel, let me just double check. Oh, I'm going to flick past the intro. Towards evening on an exceptionally hot day at the beginning of July. So right from the very first sentence, the heat of the city is part of the story, an important part of the story. Gives us the feel of the place. So I don't really have much more to say about that chapter. So I'll leave it there. We'll see how this format works. Just putting videos out instead of writing screeds and screeds. I know Substack's a writing platform, so I shall write something. And then I'll pop this video in just as a way of getting my thoughts out in a different format. And see if this will get me over this resistance hump and into a place of creativity and remove the guilt. I mean, I know guilt's just ridiculous, and I thank Elfie Austin, who responded to one of my morning pages where I'd been talking of this guilt that I'm carrying because I'm not giving my subscribers what they've signed up for, you know. And she said, don't worry about it. We're your supporters. You shouldn't be feeling guilty. We all need breaks. I was like, yeah, that was really helpful, so thank you. But I do want to continue this because I enjoy it. I get a lot out of it. And I was hoping to take on the 4-year humanities course as well, where I've read Plato and the Odyssey for the first 2 months, and I've read all the Plato books, and I've made notes, and I've started writing something and then just fallen off. So I'm going to pick that up as well, but I'm only actually into the first part of the Odyssey, although we're now 23rd of the month. I should be coming to the end of at least the first part of the Odyssey. I haven't, so maybe this is the way to do that as well. Sit with the Odyssey and chat to you on camera. Right, that'll be me. Thanks for watching. If you want to follow on with this, you know where to find me. See you later.